I know that the GameXplain fans are going to dislike this, but I don't care because I really need to get this off my chest. Hey guys, it's the Middle Blade 5 and welcome to my response to GameXplain's How to Improve Zelda Twilight Princess HD discussion video. I swear, I barely made it through this video twice without going insane. Now before I start, I'll tell you that I'm not hating on GameXplain. I actually like GameXplain. It's the channel that I go to for gaming news and other stuff. They're much better than IGN, but one issue I do have with the channel is that whenever they talk about their opinions on Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, they kind of sound like jerks to me. For example, I remember one of their Smash Bros. Discussion, I think it was when Zelda was confirmed, where they talked about a new potential Twilight Princess stage for the game. And they said, that would be the only good thing to come from that game, sorry to anyone who actually likes it. So, when I saw this come up, I was dreading it, because I love Twilight Princess, and I did not want to sit through a 41-minute video of them complaining and sounding like jerks. I'm all for discussion on how to improve a game, but I'm not a fan of how GameXplain gets their opinions on Twilight Princess across. Also, what I was dreading was the fact that they made this discussion because of the Twilight Princess HD rumor, which I hope is true. So it seems like they just used it as an excuse to bash on the game, as a HD remake has not been confirmed. And it ended up being worse, in my opinion. I got a splitting headache from watching this. So, first off, I want to talk about the people in the discussion. We had Andre, Derek, and Ash, along with Trailer Jake and Weeful the Josh as guests. This I already see as a problem because Andre, Ash, and Drake hate the game, Derek is indifferent, and Josh loves it. I feel like this is very one-sided, as there are 3 people who hate it, 1 who loves it, and 1 indifferent. Therefore, the side that hates it gets to say more. And I'm not saying this is the case, but I feel like Andre, Ash, and Drake let their bias cloud some of the facts because they get some information wrong in the video. Also, Josh barely got to say anything in the video, and when he did get to speak, the others were, sometimes jokingly, criticizing his opinion and not letting him defend the game much. I just felt like this discussion was too one-sided and slightly biased at times, just my opinion, and I remember near the end of the video, I think, Andre mentioned that he hadn't played the game in like 10 years, which that means he hasn't played the game since it came out. So again, this kind of goes back to what I just said about like how they sometimes get some information wrong. They could have at least done a fact check, and then if they made any mistakes, they could just put annotations on the screen to say, we got this wrong, this is the correction, and I'll talk about that later on as well with one particular character. But yeah, they don't do that, because I mean, when I make a mistake, I put an annotation in to correct myself, but they don't do that here when they get quite a few things wrong. So finally getting to the video, the first complaint is the long tutorial opening, and I completely agree with this. The worst part of Twilight Princess, and the thing that even fans dread when replaying the game, is the long, boring, and tutorial-filled opening. It's so boring, and barely anything interesting happens. And first impressions are a big thing when it comes to games, so hopefully that will get cut down. And I do remember Aonuma saying in an interview that he will improve on the openings of future Zelda games, so maybe that will start here. Unfortunately, this is one thing that I don't think will be changed, because I think that if this is true, that it will be like Wind Waker HD and just update the visuals and added some tweaks but not change large parts of the game. So, the next complaint is the textures, which I also agree with. Due to the fact that Twilight Princess is also a GameCube game, the textures were very dated even when it came out. As Ash said, it is graphically the most aged 3D game in the series after the N64 games. Some sections of Twilight Princess do look pretty dull due to the low quality textures, and as Drake said in his unpopular Zelda opinions, Wind Waker has graphically aged much better due to the art style. This is definitely something that would be improved if this rumor is true. Next complaint is how easy the game is. While I will admit that Twilight Princess is one of the easier games in the series, as I said to Crimson Taco, every Zelda game except for the first two are easy. Also, I don't think a game should be criticized for being easy unless it makes the game boring. And to me, it doesn't. Kirby is an easy video game franchise, and it has great games which are really fun. The next complaint, and in Ash's words, is that the game is Zelda by numbers, which basically just means that there's nothing interesting added into the game that makes it stand out compared to Wind Waker and Skyward Sword. One issue I do have with Twilight Princess is that a lot of stuff from Ocarina of Time was reused in the game, although I'm not as bothered by that as some other people are. Although, I do think the game does a lot of unique things that makes it stand out to the same level as Wind Waker and Skyward Sword, because of things like Wolflink, Midna, the plot, the darker atmosphere, the unique items, etc. I think where they're coming from is more due to not playing the game in a long time, as I mentioned earlier, and maybe their dislike of the game, minus Josh, getting in the way of them remembering some things. Next complaint is Hyrule Field, and that it's empty. I really hate when people say that it's empty, because it's not! It's better than Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field because there is actually stuff in it, such as enemies, pieces of heart, books for Agatha's side quests, hidden areas and chests. It goes back to what I said in my top 10 games I like but everybody hates when talking about Skyward Sword, where I mentioned the complaint with the sky, where I said it's more to do with how far apart everything is rather than the actual content, because the issue is more how large it is rather than it being empty. This, I think, is the first instance of the side that hates the game at letting their bias kind of clouding the facts, because saying it's empty is an exaggeration, and they're only seeing this issue in the game they hate and not acknowledging Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field, which was empty. And for Castletown, do you really want to interact with thousands of people? If that was the case, then everywhere you go, you would be stopped in order to talk to someone. I think that just having the people there is good enough to show the town being lively. Also, there are shops in Castletown. There's the expensive shop that becomes Mellow Mart, and Gora merchants you can buy things from, and there's still a minigame and other things such as Agatha and the Fortune Teller. It has about as much content as Ocarina of Time's Castletown, possibly more, which again is another instance of bias potentially clouding facts. Seriously, Drake mentions add more side quests when the video has Link next to one of the side quests, and it has the same number of side quests as Ocarina of Time's town. And also, as Ash mentions how nobody in the town cares about what's going on, the game states why they are oblivious to what's going on. In fairness, I will give that to you when Hyrule Castle is trapped in the Diamond Shield thing, but for everything else, the game explains that, and even then, they had no idea what was going on when Hyrule Castle was trapped in the shield. Also, the same thing happens in the past in Ocarina of Time after Ganondorf betrays the king and in Majora's Mask prior to the final 6 hours. Now, for the next thing which really annoyed me is that Derek practically says that the reason why people love Twilight Princess is because of Midna. Midna is a part of why people love Twilight Princess, including me, because Midna is one of my favorite Zelda characters, but it's not just that. It's also because of the plots, atmosphere, amazing creative dungeon design, which is honestly one of the most important things in a Zelda game, Wolflink, the dungeon items, which I'll talk about later, the amazing music, and more. It's not just Midna. I don't let one character affect my opinion of a game. If that was the case, then I would like the Wonderful 101 because I kind of like Wonder Blue. And I know this is off topic, but I'm going in the order of things said in the video, but to again show my point that Andre, Derek, Ash, and Drake get some information wrong in this video, is that when they talk about the character Uku, they call her Okoko. They couldn't pronounce a character's name right, and there is no annotation or correction. They refer to her as Okoko for the whole video. So briefly, Andre mentions the whole message about what rupee you got when you reset the game, which I heard was due to a glitch, but I'm not exactly sure if that's the case. But I do agree with this complaint because that was very annoying. But what also annoys me is that Andre complains about the fact that if you can't fit enough rupees that you get from a chest, you have to put it back and have the chest icon remind you. Why is this a problem? this is a good thing, because in other Zelda games, and this is something that happened to me in my Skyward Sword LP, is that if you pick up a rupee from a chest and it was too big, you will use up that rupee and potentially waste a ton of money. Twilight Princess fixed that by having you put it back and has the chest on the map to remind you so you don't forget about if you need rupees. And you complain about it? And then Derek talks about how there's nothing to spend rupees on other than the magic armor. You need rupees to buy bombs, upgrades such as the Hawkeye, potions, and other things you keep in your bottles such as lantern oil. Even some side quests, such as the charity side quest, requires you to spend rupees. Next is another common complaint that I hate. You never use dungeon items after the dungeon you get them. First off, this is an issue that the entire Zelda series suffers from, not just Twilight Princess, and this game is actually one of the better games to handle that issue, because each dungeon item is required, as in, if you ignore all the side quests, at least once after the dungeon you get it in, and that only applies to the ball and chain. The spinner, Dominion Rod, and Gale Boomerang are still used a couple of times after their respective dungeons, and the bow and claw shots are used quite a lot in creative ways. Even items that you don't get in dungeons, such as bombs and the iron boots, are still used a lot. And I don't want to call you guys hypocrites, but one of the worst games in the Zelda series to handle this issue is Majora's Mask, the game that you praise. And I like Majora's Mask too, but in the game you use the bow a lot after its dungeon, but you only need to use the fire arrows after the Snowhead Temple for the weight puzzle in the Great Bay Temple. You only use the ice arrows once after the Great Bay Temple, and you only use the light arrows after the Stone Tower Temple in the final battle if you don't use Fierce Deity Link. So 3 of the 4 dungeon items are barely used after their respective dungeons. Now, the next complaint is something that makes my blood boil. Ash complains about Wolf Link by comparing it to Amaterasu from Okami. While they are both wolves, that isn't a fair comparison because Wolf Link is a transformation. So while Amaterasu is always a wolf, so with Wolf Link, they also had to develop Human Link at the same time, meaning that Wolf Link naturally would not have as much of stuff as Amaterasu because she doesn't have another form to change into for them to develop. And also, plus, while Okami and the Legend of Zelda series are the same genre, they do have different mechanics, such as Amaterasu's brush powers and different weapons, which is again why I think this is an unfair comparison. The only thing I agree with Ash at this part is that I think they should make Wolf Link run faster. And this moves us over to the next complaint from Andre, who says that you never need to use Wolf Link after collecting the Tears of Light, aside from smelling scents. That's not true, because you still have Shadow Beasts, which are easy to take out with Wolf Link's multi-attack. You can walk with Wolf Link, you can use Wolf Link's senses for things other than scents. In fact, Wolf Link has more abilities than each of the Majora's Mask transformations. And finally, we have reached the end of the complaints. I'm surprised I did not flip my shit as much as I thought I was going to. Seriously, I respect your opinions, despite what you might think, but this discussion had very little to do with improvements and was more just bashing the game repeatedly, which isn't a critique. I remember Ash saying that it evolved into just hating on Twilight Princess around near the end of the discussion, when that's pretty much what 97% of the discussion was, in all honesty. And going back to the incorrect info, I can understand you making mistakes, because everyone does that, but what annoys me is that you use this incorrect info to complain about issues that don't exist, or to back up your complaints, which makes them hard to hold up. And when you give incorrect information in a video that is supposed to be giving a critical view on how to improve a game, it comes off as a bit unprofessional. And especially with the unfair comparison of Wolf Link and Amaterasu. And again, the discussion was very one-sided, and there are 2 people who like the game who would have been great to have on instead of just Josh. There's some Call Me Johnny who said in the Super Gaming Brothers Super Smash Bros. Saturdays that he likes the game and he has appeared on some of your previous discussions, and Messiah Nella, because for the whole video, you used gameplay from her Let's Play of Twilight Princess, and you did credit her, so you must have been given permission to use it. And she likes the game as well, so that would have made the discussion far more balanced. And don't go thinking that I'm some fanboy who thinks the game is perfect, because there are definitely things that can be improved about Twilight Princess. What I think should be improved is the graphics. Given the option to use a gamepad or Wii remote for people who either like the GameCube version more or the Wii version more, cut down the opening, increase Wolf Link and the opponent's running speed, and include a hero mode where you could have it flipped, so again you have both the maps of the GameCube and Wii versions to appeal to fans of both of those. I know GameXplain fans are going to dislike this, but I don't care, because I really needed to get my thoughts of this video off of my chest, because not getting to talk about it was driving me nuts. So with that, I'll see you guys for my next response video.